Hey guys, so this is 4.3, going through the area of a parallelogram. So by the end of this, you should be able to develop a formula to find the area of a parallelogram. So at first, we need to understand what area is what a parallelogram is, okay? So area is the amount of surface, and it's measured in units squared. So you guys probably remember that to find a area of a square, it's length times width, right? So that's a L. So, and it's measured in unit squares because you have centimeters times centimeters, right? So you end up getting centimeters squared. So that's what we need to know for area. So what's a parallelogram exactly? So a parallelogram is a four-sided polygon with two sets of parallel sides. So what that means is it has two sets of parallel lines. Okay. And so these two lengths would be the same. These two lengths would be the same. So it has two sets of parallel sides. So here are some shapes. So we have these are all examples of parallelograms, okay? So a square would be an example of a parallelogram, right? It has this side and this side are parallel, and this side and this side are parallel. Same thing with a rectangle. These two sides are parallel, and these two sides are parallel. Okay, remember parallel lines, they don't touch each other, right? So a rhombus is basically, you can almost think of it like a rectangle, but like shifting at an angle, right? So these two lines here are parallel, and then these two lines here are parallel. So it has one set of parallel lines, two set of parallel lines. Okay, so that's a parallelogram as well. And then we also have just a regular parallelogram. So this is a parallelogram, right? These two sides are parallel, and then these two sides are parallel. So the question is, how do we find the area of a parallelogram? Well, if you guys remember, with squares and rectangles, it's length times width, right? So it's going to be the same for a parallelogram, but a little different, okay? Because what's important is that you understand how to find the height, because of course it's at an angle. It's shifting kind of towards one side, right? So the lines aren't exactly straight up and down. So we're going to use the formula area equals base times height, or length times width, right? Same thing. They mean the same thing, length times width. Or base times height. So this is the base, right? The bottom would be the base. And of course, height would be the distance from top to the bottom straight down. Now notice how I said distance from top to bottom straight down. So if you notice in this parallelogram right here, what you'll see is I drew an arrow straight up and down. So this is actually what you're going to use for height, not the angle of these two lines. Okay, so area equals base times height. So if I was looking at this rectangle right here, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 centimeter base and a 2 centimeter height. So base times height, that would mean 4 times 2, which would give me 8 centimeters, or 8 units squared. Okay, now for this one, we have 1, 2, 3 centimeters for the base. And height is straight from the bottom to the top, right? So we're going to go, this is how we're going to measure the height, from here to here, right? And we're going to look at the number of squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 3 by 4. So 3 times 4, right? Because base times height. So 3 times 4, that would give us an area of 12. Okay, because if we were to actually take this parallelogram And if we were to, and you can try this with a piece of paper or make a parallelogram and then kind of shift it towards one side back and forth, right? You can actually, if I was to shift it so that everything was straight up and down, right, I would get a 3x4 rectangle, right? So that's why we take, that's why it's so important that we take the height straight up and down, right? Okay, so even when it's shifted at an angle, right, we look at the distance straight from the bottom to the top. Okay, so find the area. So remember that you guys show all steps. So that means formula, right? So I want you to be writing the formula. I want you to be substituting in the numbers, right? And then I want you to give me the answer. Okay, so those should be your 3 steps when you're solving area. So we're going to do this parallelogram right here. So if we look at it, right, the height is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 centimeters. And if I look at the distance straight from this side to this side, not at an angle, but straight, I would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 6 by 5 centimeters. So area equals base times height. Substitute in your values, 6 times 5. That would give me 30 units or 30 centimeters squared. Okay, so for this next question, I'm going to give you guys, if I was given area and I needed to find the length. So let's say that this parallelogram, number 1 right here, let's say it has a height of 4 centimeters, let's say. And let's say the total area of this parallelogram is 32 centimeters. What is the base? So let's go back and let's look at that formula. Area equals base times height. We have height and we have area. We need to find base. So how do we do that? Area is 32 centimeters and height is 4. So if I wanted to solve for B, I would simply do the inverse or the opposite operation. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. Okay, so what I do to one side of my equation, I'm going to do to the other. All right, so if I'm going to divide by 4, right, to isolate the variable and solve for B, right, because I want to end up with B equals something, right? So I'm going to have to get rid of the 4 by doing the opposite or inverse operation. So I'm going to divide by 4. And what I do to one side of my equation, I do to the other. So 32 divided by 4 is going to give me 8. So the base is actually 8. Okay, so let's do another one here. So let's say that the area of this is 20. And let's say the base is, let's say 5. What is, actually, sorry, let's say that the base is 2. What is the height? Okay, well, if I was looking at this, remember area equals base times height. I have an area of 20, and I have a base of 2, and I'm trying to solve for height. So I need to get rid of this times by 2 by dividing both sides by 2. That's going to give me h, or height, is equal to 20 divided by 2, which is 10. Okay, so what I want you guys to work on are these questions in your textbook. So page 141, questions 1 through 6, and then question 9. And we'll talk on Wednesday if you guys have any questions, okay? All right, good luck.